Ah, let me take you back to when I managed the Florentine Hotel in that small railroad town in southern Illinois. The hotel had sprung up in '54, right there along with the iron veins of the railroad, and it was shining like a beacon of civilization in the wild. Back then, why, it was the tallest and largest building in Florence. One day a man named Mr. Jameson waltzed into the hotel asking for a room. After he got settled down for a bite, it didn't take long to know that he had plans of some kind. He could talk the birds out of the trees and put on a wardrobe every morning that'd make royalty blush. Jameson was a master at avoiding scrutiny, slipping through questions like an eel. Yet his charm, that silver-tongued devilry, it was magnetic. You found yourself drawn in, believing perhaps this man held the key to fortune. He could convince anyone that if you just listened to what he had to say, our little spot along the railroad would become a thriving utopia in our own time. One evening, under the golden glow of the Florentines' dining hall, Jameson, with a glass of the finest whiskey in hand, regaled us with a tale of a land just beyond the outskirts of Florence. He told of a piece of prairie, lush and untouched, ripe for development and supposedly under his control. "Folks," he said, his voice smooth as the whiskey he savored, "this prairie, it's not just land. It's a canvas, waiting for us to paint our future on it." The room was silent, every ear tuned to his every word, as he described a paradise where crops grew without fail, where the sun kissed the earth just right, and streams teemed with fish eager to leap into your hands. He would say, why, with a bit of work, this prairie could sustain not just a town, but a city, a beacon of prosperity in Illinois, the likes of Chicago, he proclaimed, his eyes alight with the fire of his own tales. And oh, how we wanted to believe him. The very air seemed charged with promise, with dreams of what could be. For a moment we saw it too. Through Jameson's words, we gazed upon that land of grass, sparsely populated with trees, feeling the sun on our faces and the wind in our hair, imagining a future so bright it outshone the chandeliers above us. Nights at the Florentine turned into impromptu gatherings, with Jameson at the center, spinning yarns of the wealth just beyond the horizon. His stories, they weren't just empty air. They were crafted with care, weaving the possibilities of tomorrow with the threads of today. And we, caught up in the whirlwind of his vision, couldn't help but be but let me tell you about the unraveling of Mr. Jameson's grand scheme. Jameson, with all his charm and grandiose tales, started slipping up, the finer details of his plans as elusive as a shadow at noon. He'd been selling promises of land to migrants from out east, parcels of dreams woven into contracts as thin as paper and just as easily torn. The lands he sold, well, they belonged to the horizon. You could see them, maybe, if you squinted hard enough into the future he painted. One day it was Mr. Merrick who brought it to light. Merrick, who'd never been one to let a dollar slip by unnoticed, came strutting down the main street with a deed he had ripped from the hands of a man he overheard saying he was new to the town. He had asked him where he was coming from and where him and the family would be settling down. When he saw the deed, he ripped it from the man's hands with fire in his eyes. "This land Jameson sold you," he bellowed, waving the paper like a flag, "belongs to the Harles and has for generations." And right he was. The Harles, as perplexed as the rest of us, had no intention of selling their family farm, especially to a ghost brokered by Jameson. The tale spread like wildfire, with more men coming forward, deeds in hands and tales on their lips of lands that overlapped. Jameson's empire of air and promise began to crumble, not with a bang, but with the quiet indignation of a community scorned. The whole time all this was going on, I was watching from behind the desk at the Florentine, just wondering when things would start to get interesting. Then it was the Harper family who came rolling into Florence one fine morning, their wagon as packed with their worldly goods. Of course, it was Jameson who was the fellow behind this. He had sold them a slice of Illinois paradise, sight unseen. Except this paradise was a creek-bottom swampland. The Harpers, they were expecting fields of green, not a swimming hole for mosquitoes. Jacob mustn't have been one to sit and stew. He marched into town, gathering folks like he was leading a parade. Florence hadn't seen such excitement since someone tried building another saloon. They all tromped down to the courthouse with fire in their bellies and mud on their boots. It was a sight, let me tell you. But they didn't storm the castle, so to speak. Rather, they crafted a plan more fitting for the cunning that had ensnared them. They organized a gathering right in the heart of Florence, under the guise of celebrating Jameson's contributions to our burgeoning community. Invitations were sent, whispers spread, and the stage was set for a confrontation as theatrical as any play performed in the grand cities back east. Jameson must not have been as smart as he thought. He had the air around high that said he was ever the man to bask in his own glory. And he appeared at the gathering with the confidence of a king entering his court. The townsfolk circled, feigning adulation, as Jacob Harper stepped forward with a petition signed by every misled soul, demanding Jameson make right his web of deceit. For a moment you could see the gears turning in Jameson's mind, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for an ally where he found none. The realization dawned on him like a cold Illinois winter. He was trapped, not by ropes or bars, but by the very people he'd sought to fool. With the grace of a cornered fox, Jameson attempted his final act, a speech filled with promises of future prosperity, assurances of misunderstanding soon to be rectified. But the air had changed. The crowd's mood was immune to his charm. It was then, amid his floundering attempts to regain control, that he spotted the exit, left unguarded by the gathered crowd, more focused on justice than on containment. Jameson made his escape, slipping away with the agility that had undoubtedly served him well in his dubious career. The town watched as he vanished, not with the satisfaction of seeing him brought to justice, but with a collective realization that they had reclaimed their dignity and their future from the clutches of his deceit. Jameson, you see, was not just a man with a talent for selling dreams. He was also a man deeply enamored with the art of the gamble. He didn't just bet on lands and deeds. He bet on his ability to charm, to weave his narrative so tightly around the hearts and minds of Florence that he became an integral part of its unfolding story. Jameson believed that his presence lent credibility to his tales, that by standing firmly on the very soil he sold in illusions, he could anchor those illusions in a semblance of reality, with the hope that a town would be born in his name. He just didn't cover his own tracks well enough.